Joining us is Democrat Congressman Adam Schiff. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and will be leading the hearings. Welcome back, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
We know you're planning to hear from the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, State Department official George Kent on Wednesday, and then Friday the committee will interview the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yanovich. They've all testified behind closed doors. You know what they've said. What can we expect to hear before your committee publicly?
Ambassador Yovanovitch was forced out of her office, out of her post, by a vicious smear campaign led by the president's allies. Her successor would be Bill Taylor. He would then take her place in Ukraine. George Kent is the top Ukraine person in Washington. So this week you'll hear from the ambassador, her replacement, as well as the top person in Washington about this channel the president used through Rudy Giuliani, through an ambassador named Gordon Sondland, to essentially coerce Ukraine into investigating his political rivals, to investigate the Bidens, as well as a debunked conspiracy theory that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that hacked our election in 2016, something the intelligence community rejects, the FBI rejects, even the bipartisan Senate investigation rejects, but nonetheless the president thought was beneficial to his campaign.
Republicans have just released a longer wish list of witnesses for the public hearings, which includes repeated requests for testimony by the whistleblower and also former Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Why are you opposed to having them appear?
Well, first of all, the president and his allies in Congress want to out the whistleblower so they can punish the whistleblower. We have already seen the vast majority of the allegations that have been subject to proof yet proved by other witnesses. The whistleblower reported much of what they reported secondhand. We now have firsthand testimony on those issues. So the whistleblower isn't necessary except for purposes of retribution, which is exactly why the Republicans have put the whistleblower on their list. But we're not going to allow the committee to be used to out and punish a whistleblower who has the right to remain anonymous under the statute. As far as the Bidens are concerned, we're also not going to let the committee be a vehicle to conduct the same sham investigation that the president sought to coerce Ukraine into conducting. But I will say there are some witnesses on their list that are not sham investigation witnesses, and they're not efforts to out the whistleblower, and we're giving those very serious consideration.
President Trump is tweeting this morning, tweeting about you, and we'll share some of those tweets right now and get your reaction. The first one is, Shifty Adam Schiff will only release doctored transcripts. We haven't even seen the documents and are restricted from, get this, having a lawyer. Republicans should put out their own transcript. Schiff must testify as to why he made up a statement from me and read it to all. And then went on to say the lawyer for the whistleblower takes away all credibility from this big impeachment scam. It should be ended, and the whistleblower, his lawyer, and corrupt politician Schiff should be investigated for fraud. Your reaction?
Well, I guess it said investigated for fraud, but besides that, look, I don't know what to make of the president's tweets, except he is a very agitated human being. I spend most of my time trying to ignore his Twitter taunts. But I will say this claim that the transcripts of these depositions aren't accurate is, like so much of what the president says, just plain false. There were almost 50 Republicans who were able to sit in on those hearings. Now, the vast majority of them didn't want to use the time to sit in. They wanted to instead complain that they were excluded. But those who did sit in know that the transcripts are accurate. Even they are not making this claim that the president is. So when the president's own strongest acolytes in Congress won't corroborate his falsehoods, you know that's saying something.
On Friday, the Republicans assigned Representative Jim Jordan to the House Intelligence Committee, one of President Trump's closest allies in Congress, tough critic of yours. He and other Republicans, they criticized the closed-door process of these impeachment hearings leading up to this week that they're now public. Why did you decide to work outside of the view of the public initially?
Well, in prior impeachments, there was a special prosecutor or independent counsel doing the investigation behind closed doors. They did it in the grand jury, and they did it so that witnesses couldn't tailor their stories or alibis to other witnesses. And we've seen the importance of that in the need for Gordon Sondland, for example, after the testimony of other witnesses came out, to try to amend his own testimony. So there's good reason to do it. The difficulty for Mr. Jordan, with all respect, is These are exactly the kind of hearings that he participated in during Benghazi, in which he supported the exclusion of agency lawyers, in which he and Trey Gowdy thought that the most productive way to get to the truth was doing these private depositions. So it's awfully hypocritical of Mr. Jordan or Gowdy or others to say that the process they used is somehow now unfair. Over 100 members of Congress could sit in on those depositions. But interestingly, after complaining that these were done in private, the president is now saying there shouldn't be public hearings. So they can't even get their act together. They didn't want private hearings. They don't want public hearings. The bottom line is they don't want the American people to know the truth.
You've heard the president say that the phone call at the center of the impeachment inquiry with the president of Ukraine is, as he puts it, perfect. And you've heard Republicans defend the president and say that from what they've heard, there was nothing improper about what was on that call or the actions that they've seen around that call, that it doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. To them, you say what?
Well, first of all, I don't know how anyone can look at the effort in black and white of the President of the United States trying to coerce an ally to investigate his political rival and say that's okay, trying to get another foreign country to intervene in our election to help this time the president's re-election campaign. I don't know how any self-respecting member can make that argument. But it's worse than that. It's worse than just that call, because what these witnesses will testify to is all the preparation, all the effort to coerce President Zelensky before that call, all the efforts to coerce him after that call, the suspension of hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funding that was to go to Ukraine's military defense against the Russians, being withheld as added leverage over the president of Ukraine to conduct this political investigation. No one can say that that is anything other than corrupt. And if we're to say now that that is somehow compatible with the office of the presidency, what does that mean for the presidency? Not just this one and what this president can do, but what future presidents can do.
Many of them have said, look, there is always, aid is often used as leverage to get what we want out of another country. We're giving them money, they need to do what we want. And they would say, they have said that this is about investigating corruption in Ukraine. It wasn't about investigating President Trump's rival.
Well, except that this is where the call record is so damning, because, of course, what does Donald Trump ask for in this call? Not that they go after generic issues of corruption, not that they set up independent courts to better prosecute corruption. No, the president brings up two things. I want you to investigate the Bidens, and I want you to investigate this debunked conspiracy theory codenamed CrowdStrike, which means it wasn't the Russians who did it in the last election, it was the Ukrainians. And so the call record itself, the president's own words, betray his intent, which wasn't fighting corruption. It was actually to get Ukraine to be corrupt, to engage in these corrupt investigations of his rival.
All right. Thank you for being here this morning. Once again, U.S. Representative Adam Schiff, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and 10-term congressman in Los Angeles County. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you.